own democracy, and this is a process. The Europeans didn't create a democracy between 1 year or 2 years. It took them hundreds of years to create democracy in Europe, and we need a lot of time. This should be done on the social level. People, I don't want to name myself, but people who are liberal in Syria, real liberals, seculars, they have a huge burden and work in order to spread the values of, for example, democracy, human rights, multiculturalism, women's rights, and etc., in order to first create a culture of democracy among the people and then create a political system. Changing the political system without changing the minds of the people will create another system which is not democratic, just like what happened in Egypt, for example. If you don't educate the people and give them the right political culture, they will choose the Sharia law. They will choose God. Because somebody will come and say, I represent God, this is the version that we need to follow, and the people will follow this man, just like what happened in Egypt. Democracy, with the first elections, led to the Muslim Brotherhood to power.
Is that the concession Assad will have to do, more democracy? Because when you heard the Western media, the Western powers here, there was, until 2015, no solution with Assad. Now, right now, we can say what will happen after the war, Assad must be part of it, because he will win the war.
Let me answer your first question. The Russian used the Air Force, the Iranian used their ideology, and the Syrian army used men and equipment. The combination of all three resulted in the success against Al-Qaeda and ISIS terrorists in Syria. It is not only Russia that made a difference, because people don't surrender to a jet in the sky. So you need forces on the ground to create a setup where there's a benefit from the air bombing. Now, for your question of democracy and the Middle East, that's a very good one and a very complicated one. We see Saudi Arabia, the Gulf, the Emirates, they all calling for a democratic Syria. And there is no democracy in their own country. I mean, until just a few weeks ago, women were allowed to drive a car in Saudi Arabia. Hence, they call for a democratic country in Syria. It is not possible to call for the democracy in the Middle East in a way to mirror the democracy existing in Europe. Now, I remember when I was in Iraq during the war in 2003, 2004, when George Bush said, we are bringing the democracy to this country. And I saw the Iraqi rushing to the supermarket looking for democracy tins. And they couldn't find any because they don't know what is democracy. They don't know how to live in a democratic state and what are the requirements to live in a democratic country. In Syria, it's a more open country because there are Christians, there are Druze, there are Shia, Sunni, Alawite, and there are atheists, and there are all kinds of people living in one society. They have the freedom to live, but the regime is not a democratic regime. And there is no way that you can introduce or force a democratic system in a country that have never lived in democracy. Not in Syria, not in Jordan, not in Saudi Arabia, in the Emirates, in Qatar, in Bahrain, and all these are our allies. And suddenly we wanted democracy in one single country. So Assad was a bad guy 6 years ago, and today he's a good guy. But we are changing our parameter.
But Syria was a one-party state before the war.
Yes.
Will it be a one-party state after the war?
Syria was one-party state because it's a party who won the elections and a party who was ruling.
Mm-hmm.
Like in every country, when one party rules, people gather behind it. But it's different in the Middle East. People like the strong man. They like a strong figure. You see portrait of the head of the army in the Middle East. We don't have that in Europe. We don't know who is the head of the army. You see the portrait of the head of the security services. We don't know who is the head of the security services. He's a commoner. In the Middle East, he's not. He's a very powerful man. So they like figures, they like people. They go behind people, they don't go behind system. Of course, there is more democracy in Lebanon, but again, it's a country ruled by 7 or 8 leaders. So can you call that democracy? I don't know. I mean, there is a parliament. There is a parliament in Kuwait where there are Sunni and Shia living together, but there is one emir from one generation to another passing on the power to his son after him. So we can't impose what we know and what works in our society on other people and other societies that are alienated to something we know. It took us a long time, as he said, so I don't know.
Is Assad the best guarantee for the minorities, like Christians and Druze in Syria?
I am personally against regime changes anywhere in the world. It's up to the population to decide who they want for them to be the leader. It is not really
But that's
up to us.
democratic, then they have to be able to choose.
Yeah, but it's not up to us to decide, neither to any other politician around the world to say who they like to rule a country. So we can't impose that on the Syrian government, we can't impose that on any other government if we don't like his ruling. So suddenly we say Obama considers Saudi Arabia as a sponsor of terrorism. Donald Trump considers Saudi Arabia the best partner counter-terrorism. Who's saying the truth here? I mean, the difference between one president to another was 15 days with 2 different statements and completely the opposite. We see among 19 terrorists who carried the attack of 9/11, there are 15 Saudis, and we consider Saudis are our best partners because they have a lot of money and we need their money. So is that King Salman is the best person to rule Saudi Arabia? We don't know if the Saudis are happy with their king, so let them have it. It's exactly the same in Syria.
This democratic process in Syria will be very difficult when I listen to Elijah.
I totally agree with him because the relationship, the social relationship between individuals and between communities is not from left to right. It's like the relationship between a person and the God, especially in at families. The father rules the family, and the leader of the church leads the Christian community, and the imam leads the Muslim community, and then it goes upper and upper until the main leader, who is the president. And taking from what our colleague said, for example, in Libya, after the toppling of Gaddafi, now they are looking for a military man to reunite Libya, and they found Haftar. So in all the places, the people are looking for that one symbolic leader, the strong man, to lead them again. This is in the psychology of the people, and this is where we need to work in order for this process to go on and to develop. And the people, the youngsters nowadays, the Syrians, those who are educated, who lived in Europe, in the United States, and those who will come back later on to Syria, they will participate mainly in the spread of these cultures. And with the help of social media, nowadays I post a lot about democratic values, about women's rights, multiculturalism and stuff on social media. And I found positive reactions from people, even from people who considered one day themselves as conservatives, and especially between the women in Syria, and especially those who are, for example, putting the scarf against their will. So a lot of people are speaking up nowadays on social media, which is one of the tools that we can use in the future in order to foster this process of democratic change in Syria. But from what you said, is President Assad is the best solution for the minorities? In my opinion, President Assad is not the best solution for the minorities only. He is the best solution for all Syrians at the moment. All other alternatives are much, much worse than President Assad. There is a very well-known equation in Syria that says when 50+1% of the Sunnis are against the regime will crumble. That means the regime in Syria, they have the support of the Muslim Sunnis, who are the majority in Syria, and especially the Sunnis of Aleppo. and the Sunnis of Damascus. Only the Muslims of Aleppo and Damascus are 9 million. So you're talking about 9 million Sunnis as a strong bloc supporting the Syrian government for patriotic reasons, national reasons, for economic reasons, for social reasons, for many reasons. Because there are two types of patterns nowadays. You either choose to live under Sharia law or you choose to live under civil law. There is no other alternative. There is no this pinky, beautiful, alternative, democratic rebels that the people are not choosing. Nowadays, Idlib, they call it the candle of the revolution. If you want to go to Idlib, which I believe none of you can go there because you are all disbelievers for them. They will behead the people who consider disbelievers. But it's written at the entrance of Idlib, democracy is apostasy. Democracy is against the rule of God. They're saying this publicly in front of their entrance of the cities. And but in the media here, unfortunately, the mainstream media in the West, they call them fighters for democracy. So it's exactly the opposite. It's becoming embarrassing for them to support these radicals in our country because they will not win, even among their societies, even among the Sunni communities. The Sunnis in Syria are moderates. They are pro-life. They are not pro-death. They don't want to kill themselves in a suicide car bombing in order to enjoy paradise. The paradise is here in Syria. They can enjoy it as much as they want. This is the two pattern of lives going on against each other, fighting against each other. And that's why, in my opinion, Assad is winning this war, because Assad, even in Raqqa, for example, when the people wanted the Sharia, now they are experiencing the Sharia in Raqqa and in Idlib. And now ask the Raqqans or the Idlibis, do they want to continue in this life? Do they want to see the people are crucified because they did something wrong in their lives, or they want to go to jail for 5 years for the same crime they did under Assad? They will choose Assad.
Slotvraagje. Jij gaat terug, Jens.
Een van de zaken die op de agenda staan is inderdaad om terug te gaan naar Syrië, om een vervolgreeks te maken. De verhalen die ik heb gedaan, zien hoe dat met de mensen daar is, als ook nieuwe plekken proberen te bezoeken.